everything. So, I will try to bring you to a rapid tour to the very beginning of fusion. The very beginning of fusion is not ICF, it's not tokamak, it is muon catalyzed fusion, which was started in your place in 57 by Luis Alvarez at University of California, Berkeley. Because in those days, this highly distinguished particle physicist saw his plates and he sees that the muon, you know what mesons are. They are intermediate particles between, they are hadronic particles, but of smaller mass than proton and neutron, and they could interact with Coulomb interaction with the hadron like proton, deuterium, tritium, and whatever. So Luis Alvarez realized that he can have exotic molecule of mesons interacting with proton or deuterium, whatever, and he realized immediately the potentiality of doing fusion through hydrogenic molecular ions. That means a pion attached to a deuterium and a tritium, or a deuterium and a deuterium. And when he saw his plate, he said he had only one fusion for 15,000 occurrence of muons. That was very low. So what he did, he closed himself as a monk in the lab for 3 weeks, and he ordered a military bed camp, and he was given food. He was working alone on his plate, and after 3 weeks of hard work, maybe 24 hours a day, he realized that he could have one fusion for 300 muons. After that, there was some analysis by J.D. Jackson, who is also a professor on the faculty at UCAL Berkeley, and the subject more or less moved to Soviet Union. For several tens of years, highly distinguished physicists in the former Leningrad area, under the guidance of Zeldovich, like Gerstein, Ponomarev, and so on, worked the things. They worked out the quantum mechanics of hydrogenic molecular ion with non-zero mass. You know, when you switch to electron to muon, you have to do new calculation and so on. And also they perform experiments. To make a long story short, finally they come up with the possibility of using one muon for catalyzing 130 fusion. Of course, to be in the ballpark of ICF and tokamak, you need 500. Okay? And why this was so? Because simply, when you perform the game of deuteron plus tritium gives you alpha plus neutron, the alpha is swallowing the muon, and then you are off the game, you know? This is sticking. So a lot of people advocated after 40 years that a plasma should be introduced in the game instead of cooled hydrogen. Is that the proposal? No, I developed this idea, but in the framework of ICF and warp-dense matter context. So, how to produce the meson? An obvious idea is to use fast ignition. In fast ignition, instead of restricting yourself to a 2 MeV relativistic electron beam, you leave the beam energy. And you use the technique of the so-called dream beam, developed by Victor Malka at École Polytechnique, by Wim Lemans at Berkeley, and somebody else in England. And then you can have relativistic electron beam of several hundred MeV. So with 140, you can, out of deuterium and tritium, you can electron disintegrate. So you don't need to play the whole game, which is very costly. That means to use proton-proton interaction, which require, in the lab frame, 6 GeV for producing one muon, one p meson. Out of it, you will get the muon by decay. Here you have directly, with only 140 MeV, you get the muon out of disintegrated deuterium. The same thing on tritium, with one more neutrons. Okay? And all in all, the cross-section is not that small, it's around 1/10 of a millibarn, 10 to the minus 28 centimeters square. Okay? So, in that setting, you can address, if you look at ICF and warp-dense matter capabilities, you can have this. Typically, we will be looking to ICF-like situation, and warm-dense matter-like situation. This one is especially interesting because the people of the LCLS facility at Stanford, Siegfried Glenser has told me that it's possible to have this data lasting for 500 picoseconds, and we're on with a target which will be a cylindrical, a millimeter long, you know. So now we have to address the issue of the capability of making bond state, two-body and three-body bond state, in a very dense and also hot plasma, which is the case of fast ignition, for instance. And also we have to bring a bonus, that means to show that hot plasma can be useful in desticking the meson out of the trapping alpha particle. That's the object of this presentation. Okay, so for that, you have to play. Pourquoi ça marche pas ce cas? Il est blocked. What's going on? Okay, so now I will go very rapidly through many stopping power calculation, not very difficult but useful. For instance, I will show you that the alpha has a strong low velocity stopping component, and this just to make a connection with the previous talk of last afternoon. So the alpha particle in warm dense matter, for instance, has here a strong component of low velocity stopping component. Okay, that's it. Okay, you see it here. Enlargement. Then you go to fast ignition. It's even larger. You see this. So this plays a very important role at the end of my presentation, so I do insist on it. Then the pion itself. Let us assume you produce it just above threshold with a few MeV kinetic energy. So you see that again, the low velocity stopping against the target deuterium and tritium ion is very significant. So you see that the deuterium, tritium difference of mass play a very negligible role in the calculation. So you can mimic the target by a kind of virtual DT ion. That means with a mass intermediate between deuterium and tritium. Okay, the stopping time. That's very important that the pion be trapped on a very short distance and a very short time. So you see with a few MeV, you have the stopping time is 1/10, 1/100th of a picosecond. So you are in. It will be even better for warm dense matter. So here you see that you have simultaneously short stopping time and short distance of stopping in the micron range. So then you can play the game. This distance is even smaller because you have to take care. The pion is a very small ion, so you will experience a lot of multiple scattering. So its range will be even smaller. Okay, so all that is documented here, just to show that we master this. Now we come to the real things. The real things is going back to Oppenheimer in the 20s. That means you have to recombine in a Coulomb way the pion or the muon, whatever it is nearly the same thing from the Coulomb point of view, with the deuterium or the tritium. And that you can do it in a two-body radiative way, and you have the rate of recombination. Voilà. And you see that you have this recombination rate in terms of the hydrogenic main quantum number of the exotic two-body atom. Sorry for that. Okay. And you see that you have the of warm dense matter is more favorable than fast ignition. Ça va pas bien. Okay. So you see that the most profitable, the most promising combination in two-body is with a ground state up to 2 or 3, it's okay. This is compatible with the fact that you are in a plasma, and in a plasma, you know, you don't have access to the higher state. They are blurred by the Holtzmark field. Okay? So you see that recombination is okay with the plasma thermodynamic structure. So now, if you have a two-body meson, deuterium or tritium exoatom, you need a proof. The proof is line broadening. This is the Lyman alpha line for the, here it's what? Lyman alpha line for deuterium with a muon. And then you can have the same thing for the sticking of the pion on the alpha particle. Simply you have a different scaling. It's always 10, fiducial density 10 to the 26 for fast ignition with 1 keV temperature. And you can have also Lyman beta if you want. Okay, so that could be a signature in the X-ray domain of the building up of the two-body bond state. Now you have the crucial step of three-body. So for doing that, you have to consider two things. That once you have the two-body pion deuterium or pion tritium, then you have an hydrogenic atomic structure. So you have two things. One is the polarizability. And the second thing is you have also a dipole. So combining both gives you access to a recombination coefficient called K, which is here, okay? And what is really strange that this polarizability in hydrogen has already put to a rest this hydrogen atomic physics only 3 years ago by a nuclear theorist in Brussels by Daniel Weil. You would expect that to find that in textbook, but it is not the case, and a complete derivation of this quantity is only very recent. Of course, the dipole part is quite trivial, and then you play the game of both. So here I put a factor according to if you have a static dipole or a turning one. Typically, if it's turning, when it's static, it's C is trivially equal to 1. When it's turning, it's 0.1. Okay? So out of that, you can now compute the recombination rate for building your DT pion molecule. So here are the rates. I will show you pictures, this is more exciting. So what you see is that, contrary to two-body recombination, in three-body, the rates increase with the hydrogenic main quantum number. And so you have to have a balance. And apparently, the situation is more interesting in fast ignition. This is contrary to two-body. But actually, warm-dense matter wins again, because this target can last 500 longer than the fast ignition target. So this is a real interest of a potential experiment on the LCLS facility at Stanford. Okay? So now I will show you some picture of that. Okay. So you see, the idea is very simple. It's like in molecular physics, you have your dipole, your ion, and they recombine through dipole polarizability and dipole effect. And when the dipole is static, you have the higher recombination rate. And for the two cases of warm-dense target and fast ignition target, behavior are quite similar, but the numbers are different. And all in all, when you take care of the much longer existence of the warm-dense matter target, you will see that warm-dense matter experiments are quite promising. So now I have to move to the sticking issue. In that case, I elaborate on the former stopping power calculation for the alpha particle, and you see that the stopping time is very short in both cases, and also the stopping range also is very short. So it's quite interesting. That's a preliminary. Okay, so the crucial quantity is what we can call a Rafalski ratio, with the name of the guy who worked a lot on that. You have to, it's a kind of integrated balance between, oh non, ça va pas. Okay. It's an integrated balance between the ionization cross-section of the alpha against the target ion, deuterium or tritium, and the stopping of the alpha. There is a struggle in between the two of them, and it turns out that the number with this cross-section, you see that for the alpha in the fifth plasma, in the fast ignition plasma, you have a huge relatively large cross-section. What is very significant is a huge integration range. An alpha has initially an energy of 3.5 MeV. You know, it's quite large. And your thermal temperature at most is 10 keV for the DT. In the fifth plasma is practically nothing. In warm dense matter is below 2 eV. So the cross-section for ionization in warm dense matter are ridiculously small. So that tells you that the alpha will never be ionized in the warm dense matter case, and it will be so the DT, the pion with the DT will be stable, and the alpha will be in the fifth situation will be immediately ionized. So this is quite encouraging and show you that basically we have the possibility of playing with unstuck particle, unstuck mesons on the alpha particle. So now to make contact with a vivid fusion scheme, we have to pay attention to the rapidity of the detaching of the muon. And that is given by this number. You see that the stopping time of the detached muon is all time is 1/10 or 1/100 of a picosecond. So you can have many cycles, which allows you to have more energy than the rest mass of the introduced pion. This is at least a lower bound to what you can do. So there are indeed fusion potentiality in the scheme of meson catalysis with hot, dense plasmas. So now I go to a summary. The summary is I have evaluated the bound state, 2 body, 3 body. You have also a possibility of X-ray diagnostic to really check that you have 2 body exotic atoms. I have not addressed the possibility that the muon, the pion, can stay unperturbed by hadronic interaction. I know to do it, but I have no time to elaborate on that. Simply, the cross-section for fusion are an order of magnitude above the hadronic interaction between the pion and the deuterium and the tritium. That's the point. And finally, fusion products do not stick, as expected by Soviet authors, in the case of a possible pion catalysis. So the conclusion is meson catalysis look possible in fully ionized and ultra-dense target plasma. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, please. Do you have?
Is there any plan to proposal to do the experiment in LCOS?
The only proposal I have, I think it's Siegfried Glanzer at SLAC. Siegfried Glanzer at SLAC. He's very interested in that.
Oh,
Okay, because he can have, he has simultaneously the possibility of producing the warm dense matter, and he has a relativistic electron beam. He could routinely operate up to 800 MeV, so we don't need that much.
is he going to do the experiment soon?
Not impossible. I have to okay, because at SLAC, you know, they have a very swift turnover. You know, even if you have only, of course, in a project like this, you can't promise success. But you know, they need the situation. The hardware is so consuming that it has to be running. You know, so you have to rentabilize the funding. So it's, if you have something which is too stupid, which is attractive enough, it's likely to be operated. That's the interest of SLAC.
Okay. Another question, please. Please.
Okay, thank you. It was very interesting. I missed. Where will you have the source of muons for this?
The source of muon.
Yes.
Okay, so no, here I was a bit ambiguous because you have only Coulomb interactions, and it's the same thing for a muon and the pion. And the muon and the pion have nearly the same mass. One is nearly 300 electron mass, the other is only 200 electron mass. Okay, so I expect to make things simple, I would expect the meson to be a pion. Okay, but if it's not the case, it will decay into a muon. Okay, so for me it's the same thing. Okay, you can put a muon or a pion in this calculation. This is practically the same thing. Okay, so. But if you want to be really down to the ground, you can say the muon will be obtained by pion decay. You know that the pion decay into a muon in 24 nanoseconds. Okay, that's the fate of the muon, of the pion. Okay, so the muon is still there, either by itself or as a pion, because everything is based on Coulomb interaction, and the Coulomb interaction makes practically no difference between the pion and the muon, except of the very small mass difference.
Okay. It's interesting. But I still don't understand. How many these muons or pions you need to have say, visible, measurable effect?
For measure, I told you that, okay, so that more precise questions. Okay. So now I have to go up. Okay, the answer is this. The key parameter is the stopping time of the distinct meson. You have the alpha, the end of your process is that the meson, whatever it is, pion or muon, will be swallowed by the produced alpha particle. Once you have that, you are off the game, you lose your money. Okay, it's finished. But to avoid that, you have the collision with the deuterium and tritium, and apparently, when you do through the calculation, including the stopping power, you find that your muon is detached with a velocity which is at most comparable to the alpha particle velocity, because it was attached to it. When you do this estimate, you have a very small stopping time for the detached muon, or pion, whatever it is, and this gives you that the possibility of a rapid cycling, that you need, at least you can have this amount, so nearly, at least you have 10 possible reactions in a picosecond that gives you an energy which is larger than the pion rest mass. So that's if you want to make a commercial evaluation, you say, my spending is a pion rest mass. I have spent 140 MeV for producing it, and with this very rapid cycling, with collision with the target ion, because I am in very dense situation, I could have more energy produced. I have at least that. So this could be a possibility of starting a cycling. I don't claim this could be an alternative to ICF, to tokamak, to whatever, but it can contribute in some energy range. And it also opens the way to doing what we call non-hadronic nuclear physics. That means nuclear physics based initially on only Coulomb or quantum electrodynamic effects.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I am it clear.
Okay. Please.
Thank you for a nice talk. If I correctly get, so it's if we have more non-ideal target, more non-ideal plasma as a target, the more output of ions or muons will be. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's a very interesting comment. I have not included the strong coupling effect in this calculation. That's true. This could be done. So, in the stopping power calculation, we can do them. Sometimes I did them completely. But okay, it's quite time consuming, and because we are in need of order of magnitude estimate, I behave more as an engineer compared to what you would do as a basic physicist in that area. Okay, so you are right that strong coupling effect could play a role. I think they would change essentially the collisional picture, because everything is based on collision with the ion. That's very important in this game. This was anticipated by this bunch of highly distinguished Soviet physicists. They didn't know how to do it because they had not the concept of what a plasma is. They even didn't pay attention to the fact that in a plasma you have only a few stable bound state. Everything is smeared in the higher level. You are smeared in the Holtzmark continuum. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank again.